So in this video, I'm joined by Uncle Luke from Luke's Points and Miles, and we answer a request from a viewer to improve his credit card setup. He currently has a core credit card setup made up of mostly Chase cards and Bilt to transfer to Hyatt, but he also has higher tier Marriott cards for free night awards like the Amex Bonvoy Brilliant and Chase Ritz Carlton cards. Specifically, he was trying to figure out how he could fill in the category gaps in his core setup and what hotel cards would work best given his current travel habits. And there's a great discussion about things to think about when making these decisions. So with that being said, let's just jump right in. Ashton, Stan, and Luke, you guys are the best. Please make my credit card setup better. He has a core setup with the Chase Sapphire Preferred, Freedom Flex, Ink Cash, and Ink Unlimited with Bilt. He says all his UR points are transferred to Hyatt. He has a hotel setup with the Brilliant and the Ritz for Platinum and the 2 FNCs and lounge access. And he has an airline card. He says it's a Japanese version of the Delta Gold, but I don't know what that is. So just for this exercise, we'll just use the Delta Gold as the card here. And what's nice about this, I know he watches my channel because I always say that there are these tiers of credit cards you should do in your portfolio. A core setup for spending, and then the secondary setup for benefits, and then your bench cards, you can leave up your average age of credits to get higher. So he does that core secondary setup. And I think that's a really good way to go, and I advocate for that. His questions are downsides. Some of his setup lacks some important multipliers like groceries, gas, Costco, and online shopping. He recognizes Hyatt points are easy to accumulate through his setup, but he doesn't get status through Hyatt. He doesn't stay there that often. And he also recognizes that Marriott has a lot of good properties. Like you say, Luke, they have the best properties, but probably not the best program. But unfortunately for him, points are very hard to accumulate with their credit cards. And so he wants to think about replacing it with a US bar with some Hilton Surpass to see if he can go to Hilton. He's just trying to figure out how can he make his setup better. And so there's 2 things that we're looking for. He's looking for how to improve his core setup and also what is his best hotel credit card option in general. And so if we take his cards and we look at them, this is his setup just in general. Again, the Sapphire Preferred, the Flex, Ink Unlimited, Ink Cash, and Bilt are the 5 for his core setup, all earning points to transfer to Hyatt. He has the 2 Marriott cards, the Ritz and the Brilliant, to give him the Marriott status, and he has the Delta Gold or Delta Gold analog through American Express. And just to make things simpler, to answer that first question about the core setup, here is actually what you would use each card for to cover these categories. And so given all of what I said just here, Luke, what do you think we should do to help him to improve his core credit card setup?
Okay, just my surface thought when I initially look at this, why do we have $1,000 in Marriott cards if we transfer all our points to Hyatt? Number one, and here's my opinion. You can be a Hyatt person and a Marriott person, but if you're spending $1,000 for Marriott, and Marriott has exponentially more properties than Hyatt, you may not need a secondary, and you definitely don't need 2 primary hotels. So I would make a decision there before I moved on with anything. Do I want to stay at Hyatt's or do I want to stay at Marriott's? Your status for me might be a little less important if you're only traveling 3 or 4 times a year, but I can understand somebody who says, I'm never going to get status, so I'm willing to pay the $650 to get platinum status. But if you're going to do that, stay at Marriott's and use your Chase setup for transferable currencies to, unless you're not, and I'm assuming this guy's flying as well. So I'm not a fan of airline cards, especially if you're only flying 3 or 4 times a year. So I would de-emphasize an airline card. I would probably pick a hotel to focus on. And if you do like that platinum status with Marriott, maybe that's your choice. And I would use the Chase setup for my flights and my other traveling. And if you're not completely satisfied with what you're getting there, maybe upgrade the Sapphire Preferred and then reassess from there. I think focusing on one hotel would free up the spend on other things, and you might see a big improvement just with not, instead of adding cards, just kind of reassessing it.
I think it's a really good observation, Luke. I mean, I think if you're using your points for Hyatt, maybe it's worthwhile to stick with one hotel chain, especially if you only travel 3 or 4 times a year. I think QC Man also just says he's agreeing with you as well, Luke. If he traveled as much as Stan, which is I travel a lot, he'd understand if the multiple hotel cards were existing, but because of not traveling as much, focusing on one hotel is probably better. I do also want to recognize that John R has joined our membership. Thank you so much, John, for that. That's awesome. Welcome to membership, and hopefully, we can do some really good things for you. And if you have not checked out John's channel yet, definitely check him out. So I would agree. I think what you touched on at the very end is actually important too, is the Chase Sapphire Reserve. I think if I were to look at this, I would say, well, maybe you can trade out those Marriott cards for like a Chase Sapphire Reserve when it comes to the annual fee. That's hard to say though, because if you've had these two cards for a long time, the Ritz and the Platinum, and you've already gone through that anniversary situation, now you're getting 85K certificates every single year for that fee, which is high. But if you can get that value that one time a year to redeem those 85K certificates, it may still be worth it to have it. You're just prepaying for those stays and hopefully getting a better value for it. So that's what Marriott cards are good for, is that they, once you get into the system and you like have that anniversary night award start populating, it'll just keep generating an award every single year. And the goal is to get a better value from those certificates than you would with the annual fee.
Just to add what you're saying is you got those two big league cards. They give you free night certificates. Now you have to use them. So now you're staying at Hyatt's less because you have to use these. So, that just supports maybe lay off the Hyatt stays and focus on transferable stuff.
Yeah, I'm also curious, like how much he really travels with airplanes, because maybe, we don't know the spending level of this individual, but maybe you can focus on redeeming your points for domestic flights through the Chase Sapphire Reserve or the Sapphire Preferred if you want. Bilt has options too, not just Hyatt, but there's other airline transfer partners too, depending on how much you use that card as well. The Delta Gold is a weird one because, again, you and I both are not the biggest fans of airline credit cards. But I will say that if you travel infrequently, it does help to have that first check bag free and the priority boarding if that is important to you. And if you travel 3 to 4 times, you have a check bag every single time, you can make the argument that it will eventually surpass the annual fee you have. So there's not as much information about that, but I think that's kind of what I would say about his airline credit card. But I think going back to what his question is about how can we improve his setup, it really is, I think, focusing on one hotel card. I think we both agree on that, one hotel system. But I think we should also address the fact that he's not covering groceries or gas or Costco or just like he's saying, like we said already. Chase. Yeah. So is there a card out there that you can think of that can cover that or one of those categories pretty easily?
The first thing that comes to my mind, and if I get Chase guys, if you're a Chase guy, you're a Chase guy. But if you are a Chase guy, you're not hitting gas or groceries at least 12 months out of the year. So I think at that point you have to decide, do I start a new ecosystem or do I sprinkle in some cash back? And if you watch my channel, you know that I like to sprinkle in some cash back. Let's talk about the AAA Visa that gets 5% back on groceries with a $10,000 cap, which is enough for a lot of people, not family people maybe, but 5% cash back that you can deposit in a bank account for these travels. Gas, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the City Custom Cash as your only city card, therefore it is 5% cash back because not everybody can get that Redstone Visa anymore. But here's my thing. I think he's got a lot of cards here, and I think adding them for a lot of different multipliers might not be the best idea. I mean, I think he has a really good setup, and I think even paring down might give him a better strategy than adding at this point. And also, when we talk about the Delta card, I get the check bags, but if this guy's got $1,000 in Marriott cards, it doesn't look like he's afraid of annual fees. So this might be a guy who's flying business class, and those check bags don't mean anything. And I think if you're using all these transferable currencies, and you're only traveling 3 to 4 times a year, you can probably foot the bill for business class and not worry about that check bag.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a good point you bring up, because I didn't think about the business class thing. Because we all talk about going to lounges, getting free check bags and priority boarding. But if you're buying a business class ticket or redeeming for a ticket, those things are all included already. You don't have to worry about that.
A lot of times they are. And my point is, I think 3 or 4 times a year, if you don't start traveling more than that, most folks in that category will benefit by adding cashback cards. Or I think most of them, if they're flying domestic economy, are going to do way better with a cashback setup. The travel cards are sexy. They're fun. They're fun to exercise your brain and do all this crazy stuff, but they're not the most optimal thing for everyone. Hotel cards, we all know you can get a ton of value if you use it. And you're paying a lot of money for platinum status at Marriott, but you're only traveling 3 times a year and you love Hyatt. So are you paying for a platinum status you're never going to use? So I would get the strategy and the mission statement squared away before I started adding cards, and just be patient.
That's really solid, man. I love how you said get the mission statement clear, because the goal is really important, because that way you have a way to get to where you want to go, as opposed to kind of flopping around and being like, well, I have all these great cards with great benefits, but what am I really doing with all of this? So I love how you said that. So yeah, so let's pare it down. Let's figure out a way to get those core credit card setup categories covered in the way. Maybe you do a lot of grocery shopping, so maybe that AAA daily cash card is something that's important, right? Or maybe you spend a lot on gas, then City Custom Cash would be a way to do that, or any other of the City Custom Cash categories that can cover that thing with 5%, like those expenses. So just think about that with the core credit card setup. So that's the first question. The second question was about hotels. So we discussed that really briefly, but I want to just kind of bring this next slide up to kind of look at certain options of credit cards. These are the ones that I would think that can be used in the credit card space in a way that you can get a lot of great value. And the question I want to give to you, Luke, is do you think that there's a hotel that's the best for him, given what we know about him already, or is it just kind of a toss-up?
I'd have to ask him, what kind of places are you going to stay? Because I'm still the guy who says the Hilton Aspire is bar none the best hotel card in the game. But if you're not going to stay at Hilton resorts on the first half and the second half of the year, you're not going to be able to use all those credits. And in my opinion, Hilton points are really only good at that upper 25% of properties. They're not, the Hilton points aren't great at Hampton Inns and Hilton Gardens. So if you stay at those more budget friendly properties, there might be a better card for you. The Wyndham Business Earner is a monster card. It solves a lot of problems if you stay at those types of properties, because it solves your gas problem. I think Wyndham properties are the points are really nice, especially in places like South America. I don't know about Asia. The Hyatt card, no, thank you. I don't understand that card at all.
We know how you feel about that card.
Yeah, because he's already earning tons of Hyatt points. Even the Marriott Brilliant card, I think to make that card make sense, you've got to be all in on Marriott. You've got to use that thing. And 3 or 4 times a year, I don't think is enough. Just moving down the list here, choice privileges. I don't know if that's a good primary choice, because you're not always going to find a great choice property where you want to stay. The IHG cards, I'm a big fan, and that is going to depend on how many days do you stay somewhere. If that 4th night free is valuable to you, like it is me, like 4 nights is about my max. So to get that 4th night free, the IHG points are going to be pretty valuable, considering I'll get the platinum status, the 4th night free, and I can buy those points at a half a penny each, which, going back to our original question, that makes your 5% cashback card at grocery stores a 10 times IHG point earner. Pretty cool, synergistic effect, I guess. But it's hard for me to give him a really good answer without knowing where he stays, what kind of properties he stays, and for how long. But I do say that the business Wyndham Earner is, if you stay at Wyndham's, I don't think that's a very difficult decision. It's a great card. If you stay at higher end Hilton properties, again, I think you have to put in a certain amount of days for that card to make a lot of sense. I know it makes money in theory, but I don't know if it's worth jumping through hoops for twice a year. I don't know if 3 or 4 trips is going to be worth a hotel card for me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that you said. I mean, you have familiarity with all of these programs, which I think is really great. So you have a way to really give us your experiences. And I'm a little bit less, I don't have as much experience with Wyndham or Choice or even Hyatt for that matter. But what I would say for this particular question is I notice he has the Brilliant and the Ritz Carlton. And so because of that, he probably likes to stay at higher end properties. That's my guess. I don't know that for sure, obviously. But one thing he mentioned that I think was important to bring up is that it's hard to earn Marriott points if you're not getting welcome offers on their cards. Their cards that earn terribly. You earn 2x on everything else on basically all the cards that they have, and 6x on Marriott, which is fine. But I had a previous video where I talked about how it's better to just earn a 3x on a green on a City Premier, a Star Premier, or a Wells Fargo card. That's probably better to do. So he's right. It's really hard to earn Marriott points, which is why I think it's so important to use these free night certificates as an alternative to getting points, which is not the same to say as Hilton and IHG. You and I both know, Luke, that there's a really great way you can get that 100% point bonus every single year by buying points. Now, it's not free, but you are giving the ability to book at a significant discount if you find the right property. So I like how Ash is talking about maybe shifting over to Hilton to Surpass, because that may be one way for him to get into a different system that is probably more amenable to what he is looking for. I really like the Brilliant card and the Ritz card, but it may just not be the right setup for him. Maybe he wants something that's more easier to get points, which Hilton is by far the easiest. If you look at the 3x, the points buying situation, you have the 5x business if you want to go that far for the catch-all, and even IHG too. And so those are some things to think about as you figure out, Ash, where you want to go with your hotel strategy.
When you said Surpass, something clicked. I think the Surpass, you can, whatever terminology you want to use, net, neutral, annual fee, you can purchase gift cards to kind of offset that annual fee. You can earn a lot of points, and you can get that free night certificate if you spend enough on it. So I think maybe in his situation, the Surpass, but I would only say a Surpass would make sense if you're going to change that original strategy in the first place. I don't think you need 3 hotel cards to do 3 trips a year. And also I would even say with the Marriott cards, as far as Marriott points value, you could be better off booking those Marriott properties through the travel portal with Chase at 1.25 cents. That's a decent value for hotel points. It's a very good value for hotel points. So they're difficult questions because this setup doesn't look balanced to me. It looks like it looks like we went after a few emotional credit cards that looked really good at the time. I think like a tree, maybe you prune it and then figure out where to go from there.